influencing popular culture, politics, and everything in between. The local station takes you ringside as we discuss the crazy world that is professional wrestling. This is Going Ringside with the local station.
Hello there. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Going Ringside. Today you're watching episode 13, if you're watching them in order. Now, today I'm very excited about the topic, but before we get to that, I want to explore. Last week we talked about the current business status of WWE with their merger with the UFC and AEW with their big Wembley Stadium show going on. You can get episode 12 right now wherever you get your podcast. Some important stuff there and stuff we're going to continue to follow here on Going Ringside as those things continue to develop for both companies. Today I am excited about the person we have on hand. He's a contemporary of these three gentlemen who I decided to break out my old LJN figures from the 80s. We got the Hulkster, we got Sheik, and we got the Macho Man there today. I've got others. I may rotate them out depending on the episode. But the contemporary of these three who we're talking to and sit down with today for a lengthy interview is Jake the Snake Roberts. Now, you, of course, have known Jake. He's been in the business for almost 50 years. I didn't realize that. So Jake is currently working for AEW and will be in Jacksonville next month. So he's coming to River City WrestleCon. This is the first episode we're really talking about WrestleCon. We're going to have a lot more on that coming up in coming weeks. But that's June 10th and June 11th. It's going to be held at the Jacksonville Fairgrounds. I've seen a lot of guys they have on hand. Bryan Danielson, Jake Roberts. I see RVD might be there. Devon Dudley. I've heard reports maybe a Kurt Angle. So a big crowd on hand for Jacksonville's River City WrestleCon coming up June 10th and June 11th. Mark your calendars if you can make it down to the fairgrounds. I plan on being there. We may be doing some live streams from the event, so I want to kind of start talking about that now because we're only a few weeks out from it. But I'm very excited to talk to Jake today. Jake's interview is certainly not for the faint of heart. He's lived a very hard life, and it's very proud and happy to tell me he's been clean and sober for a few years now. Jake, as you know, if you've followed his career, has had a very, very public battle with drugs and alcohol that has been documented in documentaries and things like that, as well as difficulties with the shadow of his father, Grizzly Smith. We explore that. His dad was a wrestler. We explore that. It's a very difficult family life, and he tells me that's why he turned to drugs and alcohol at such a young age, and wrestling to an extent. And we're going to explore that in this episode. Also, things like his feud with the Macho Man, where I don't know if you remember the angle where Macho Man was actually bitten by a snake. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about him being part of the iconic Austin 316 promo when he's feuding with Austin at King of the Ring 96 and just a lot of other stuff. Jake is a wealth of knowledge on this industry. He has been in it, as I said, for almost 5 decades. So let's get to it right now. Here is our interview with Jake the Snake Roberts. Well, we are really excited today to be joined by Jake the Snake Roberts, the legend in the wrestling world. All these, I guess, decades it is, Jake. Thanks for joining us today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it is decades of it.
Yeah, when did you start? Was it the 80s or the 70s?
70s.
Really? Yeah, it was that long ago?
74.
How did you get into it? Because were you living up in Stone Mountain at the time?
No. I wasn't from Stone Mountain. I was raised in Texas.
Oh, you were? Okay.
Oh, yeah. My father wrestled, and we didn't get along too well. Mm-hmm. He was an absentee father. Not a very nice man.
Yeah.
But I wanted to prove something to him. I was trying to gain his love, and wasn't getting it, and with alcohol and youth and ignorance all coupled up, I got into it. I got into it for all the wrong reasons. I just wanted to prove to my dad that I was tough and I was a man.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't go that well for me in the beginning.
Really?
No, it did not. Unfortunately, I was boneheaded and decided I was going to try the trial and error method of learning.
Okay.
and that is ignorant.
What do you mean trial and error? Was this down in Mid-South, or where were you at this point?
Yes, Mid-South.
Okay.
Mid-South. I was going to just get in there and go and just keep going and trying, and without any coaching or anything.
So what was difficult? Was it the injuries, or was it the lifestyle?
The injuries were killing me. I kept getting them back to back almost, man, because I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah.
And finally I started getting it after about a year and a half. I started getting it.
What changed? Was it just the amount of ring time you had, or did someone take you under their wing?
Ring time.
So your dad, what was his wrestling name again?
Grizzly Smith.
Grizzly Smith, that's right. So what's your relationship like with him at this point?
Well, he's dead now.
No, I excuse me, I misspoke. I meant back when you're starting in the 70s.
Not good. He didn't want me in the business.
Really?
So, yeah, he didn't want me in the business. So, against all odds and against his best wishes, which I would try to get a job someplace, and he would call them and tell them not to hire me.
Oh, that as a starting wrestler, that must have been untenable.
Horrible, man. Yeah. I had to go long. I had to go far away to get a chance. I wound up going to Canada to really get going.
Where in Canada, with the Harts or somewhere else?
No, British Columbia with Gene Kiniski.
Okay, yeah. I grew up right there in the Portland wrestling territory, so I'm somewhat familiar with the BC territory up there.
Yeah, Dutch Savage and all the rest.
Okay. And how long were you there? What happened between that time, and did you start touring around before you finally went to WWF?
Oh, yeah. I made a lot of stops. I stopped in British Columbia for about 10 months. Then I went to Calgary for about 8 months.
Was Stu running things back then?
Yes, he was.
Okay.
And then from there, I went back to Mid-South.
So you grew up in Texas. What was the transition like to Canada? It had to have been frigid. I mean, working for not a lot of money, I'm sure.
Not a lot of money, but I got plenty of ring time, and that's what I needed.
What was your gimmick back then?
Just a lanky Texan.
Really?
Yeah.
Did you go by Jake Roberts, or what was your name at that point?
Jake Roberts, yeah.
You were? And so you eventually went back to Mid-South. Is Bill Watts booking it at that time?
Yeah.
What was Mid-South like? I always heard Mid-South was kind of a brutal territory for tough guys.
It was brutal because of the mileage you put in. You did about 2,500 miles a week there.
Just driving, I'm assuming, everywhere?
Driving from here to there and back and forth. And it was incredible how many miles you could put in. Lots of days, 600 miles.
A lot of this is in the early 80s, I'm assuming?
Yeah.
So along the way, did you ever make amends with your dad, or were you just separated from that?
We finally did. We finally did towards his end. Mm-hmm. I forgave him. My father was a pedophile.
Oh.
And there was a lot to forgive.
This was something you knew about at the time growing up, or not until later?
No, I did not know.
Okay.
I knew something was wrong because my mother was 13 when I was born.
Really?
Yeah, he raped a 12-year-old.
And you did not totally understand that, I'm assuming, till later in life?
Yeah.
Did things get better for you as you progressed during wrestling?
Oh, yeah.
How did it start? When did it start to improve? Was it down in Mid-South?
No, it was. It started getting better when I was in British Columbia. Then Calgary, I was main events both places. Then I went back to Louisiana, and I was mid-card there, so that was good.
Was that when like JYD was there and stuff like that?
Yeah. Well, okay. I brought JYD in from Calgary.
You brought Junkyard Dog in from Calgary, really?
We've been up there wrestling each other.
Were you surprised how well Dog did? Because he was down in that territory.
Yeah. Everybody was surprised, man.
Now, were you playing babyface or heel at this time in your career?
Babyface.
Really? Did you prefer babyface or heel, or because you became one of the best heels of all time?
I preferred heel.
You did? Why?
Oh yeah. Well, as a baby face, you're expected to do certain things nightly. Certain moves you got to do nightly to make the crowd happy. As a heel, you can do anything you want. You can be more. You can go off the cuff. You don't have to state a script of any type. You can lead the baby face around, because that's what baby faces do. They're led by the heels.
Sure.
The heel leads them.
Did you adopt the snake gimmick at this point, or when did that not come about? You had it at this point. Yeah. How did you get involved with? How did you get involved with snakes?
I didn't. I didn't want to, but there were some numbers on the contract that convinced me to do it.
Had you ever worked with snakes before?
No, I'm terrified of snakes. I hate snakes.
Really? You, Jake the Snake Roberts, are terrified of snakes?
Yes, I am. It's so strange. I'd be terrified 24 hours a day, but when the bell rang, I became somebody else. Jake Roberts was not afraid of anything.
Sure. How did you get to that? Was that just, you dealt with it on the fly, the fear, or you just dealt with it when you're in the ring?
Yep.
So when you would go backstage, was it Damien at this point, or was it a different snake?
Damien. Well, they were all Damien.
How did you come across Damien? Tell me about that.
Oh, well, WWE got that for me.
Oh, they did? Okay.
Yeah.
And would you travel with Damien, or
yes,
was he just would you be the one to care for him?
Yeah.
Despite the fact that you didn't like snakes?
I was terrified of him. So
really?
Every night it would sleep in my bathtub in the hotels.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So you would have to carry this snake around you that you're terrified of and keep it in your hotel room night after night.
Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible. So along the way, so you're in Mid-South. Did you go directly from Mid-South to WWF? How did that transition happen?
No. I did 2 or 3 things before I went to Vince. I went from Mid-South to the Carolinas to Florida, back to Mid-South, back to the Carolinas, Georgia, World Class in Dallas.
Okay.
Then back to Bill Watts. Then I went to New York.
Then you go to New York. What was that like for you? Were you excited? I mean, that was pretty much the peak.
Tremendously excited and just blown away by the numbers they were doing. Every night was a sellout.
You come in. Who are you booked against first? I can't quite remember. So you would have been heel. Who were some of your first feuds with?
My first feud was with Ricky Steamboat.
Okay. You can't get any better than that.
No, you can't, man. And from there, it was a honky tonk man. That's when they turned me babyface.
Mm-hmm. And Damien, and at this point, that's when they got Damien for you?
When I went in up there, I had Damien.
Okay.
Yeah.
And did that give you a little something, you think, for the fans that just made you stand out?
Oh, God, yeah. It's the greatest gimmick ever.
Yeah. I mean, what would people be afraid of Damien? I mean, what were the other competitors like?
Yeah, they were scared of it too.
They were?
Oh yeah. A lot of them would say they weren't scared, but by God, whenever I put it on, they were themselves.
I remember that famous shot, I think, of Andre seeing him and jumping out of the ring. What did Andre think of Damien?
He wasn't scared of that snake.
Oh, he was not. Interesting.
No. He just did a good part.
So the one that's the most famous, that I'm sure you've been asked about for decades, is the Randy Savage incident.
Right.
Where he bit Savage on the arm while Randy's tied up in the ropes. Walk me through that. How did that come about? Tell me about that.
Well, it came about. Randy came to the locker room and said, "Yeah, we're going to do something different tonight, I hear." I said, "Yeah, that's what I hear. They want the snake to bite you." And he's like, "Well, are we sure this thing's been fixed?" Because it was a king cobra.
Fixed by having the venom removed, you mean?
Right.
Yeah.
I said, "Of course, man. Are you kidding me?" He goes, "Well, crazier things have happened." So before I let that snake bite me, that snake has to bite you here in the locker room. So for him to do it, I had to let the snake bite me first.
Oh,
So
my goodness.
I let it bite me on the leg, and he was satisfied with that. And then, of course, I hooked him up on his arm, and he wouldn't let go.
At this point, had you kind of gotten a little past the fear? I mean, were you able to deal with that at all a little better?
I still was scared of him the second bell would ring.
Really?
When it was over, I got scared again.
That's fascinating that happened. So then you continue babyface, kind of go back to heel, and you're one of the first major feuds for Undertaker.
Yeah.
Talk to me about working with Mark Calloway and
it was easy.
It was?
Oh, yeah. He'd been traveling with me, and I'd been schooling him on stuff, and that's my job,
So you were along the way known for one of the best promos in the business. You would be so cerebral and psychological and evil in the way you talked. Did that come natural to you? Did that come with time?
It came with time, and a lot of work, and I was covering for an injury I had.
Really? Tell me about that.
Yeah, I got a knee in my throat in 1978.
Oh,
it crushed my voice box. So
you kind of generally have always had a gravelly voice, which you do right now.
This is as loud as it'll get.
Is that because of that injury?
Yeah.
Really? Who do you remember the match or how that happened?
Bob Roop was the guy that did it.
I've heard the name. Where was he at? I don't remember him that well.
He was in Florida a little bit.
Okay, so you wrestled down here in Florida too, because that's where we're at.
Oh yeah. I wrestled in Florida. I was down there with Eddie Graham and Dusty Rhodes and all the group.
What was your time like in Florida?
It was great. Me and Kevin Sullivan kicked some ass.
Really?
Yeah, man. We did a great job down there.
Was that a good territory for you?
It was a fun place.
Really?
Yeah.
So tell me back to the Undertaker feud. Was he green and novice at that point? Because I want to say that was the first feud where he really kind of, I think, had to go beyond just a basic character and really have a storyline.
Yeah, it was. And we carried it off well, man. And I'm proud to say that I schooled him, and he'll tell you that I schooled him, which is kind for him to do because he certainly learned fast.
And your finisher was always that DDT and your short clothesline. Yeah. How was that developed?
Well, the DDT was an accident.
Really?
Yeah, I had a front face lock on a guy, and he went to push me into the ropes. And when he went to push me, he stepped on my foot. So there I couldn't go, and boom, down we went. Well, hell, I jumped to my feet like, oh, I can't believe I just screwed that up, And I turned and looked, and he's not getting up. It knocked him out. I thought, damn.
Yeah, it was an over move. I mean, when I watched as a fan, that seemed devastating.
Yeah, it was. It was. Sure it was.
So you told me at the beginning of the show that when you got in, the lifestyle and the substance issues were an issue. Did that continue all the way through this time in the early 90s?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, drinking and drugging, man.
Did you ever try to kick it, or were you so young that you just didn't think so?
Sure. I tried 2 or 3 times. I went to rehabs. But it was more of what I was dealing with from my history.
With your upbringing, you mean?
Yeah. Because my dad was still around through most of this, and I was still having to deal with his demons.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people knew what he was, and wrestlers aren't real kind when it comes to jokes and stuff.
Yeah.
So it would be thrown in my face quite a bit.
Really? And that was hard for you on the road to live with that.
Right, it was, man.
Really?
Knowing that he was like that, thinking about what he's done, thinking about what he could do next. It just tormented me, man. And plus my sister had been kidnapped, and murdered.
What was your
And,
sister?
excuse me,
What was your sister's name?
Jolynn.
Jolynn. Is she your only sister, or did you have other siblings?
She's my only real sister. Yeah, I've
Okay,
got some half sisters.
gotcha. So you eventually leave WWF and move on to WCW,
Yeah,
and do some work there. Going
short,
down south.
short.
Yeah, that
I
was
didn't,
short. Yeah.
I
Was
didn't
that a
stay
good
long.
experience or not?
God knows, a horrible experience.
Really? Why?
Yeah, Bill Watson, I got into it.
Because he was booking WCW at that time.
Yeah,
That's right.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. He screwed me over real bad, man.
Really?
Yeah,
And so
I
you
left. I left. I left WWE, and the reason I left is I'd been offered this humongous contract with WCW.
and I remember you were booked on top there.
Yeah, it was basically a $3 million a year contract. But before I could get there and sign it, Bill Watts came into power, and he tore the contract up because he knew
Really?
that he knew that I'd already left up there. So what am I going to do? I can't go back. So he basically got me for pennies on the dollar.
So you eventually come back to WWF
Yeah,
with the born again Christian gimmick,
yeah,
which I have never to my life seen that in wrestling other than when you did it
yeah.
in the mid 90s.
Right.
Was that life mirroring reality? Was that a gimmick? Tell
Yes,
me about that.
it was my life at the time. I was struggling so hard to stay clean, and I turned my life over to Christ. And you know, it takes so much to get clean. You got to change everything about you. And I'd given up, and I had to reach out to God because I couldn't do it.
Yeah. So you there, and then we've got to talk about one of the most famous things to ever happen in wrestling, and you were directly involved. King of the Ring 96, you and Austin.
Oh yeah.
And Austin turns the gimmick around on you and cuts his iconic Austin 316 promo. Did you know that was coming? I mean, walk me through your end of that.
Yeah, I knew it was coming. I mean, I was one of the only few people that believed in Steve Austin. And I had been schooling him and talking to him and helping him to get a big break. Vince McMahon said he was not a main eventer. So the Austin 316 thing certainly helped, and that match certainly helped. That was the beginning for him, that match. And I put him over and turned him into a superstar.
Yeah. Did anyone in the locker room have any idea what had just happened when that promo happened?
No, they didn't get it yet. I did.
Yeah. Why
Exactly
did you? Did you see how good it was?
Well, I believed him, and I already believed in him.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the perfect promo for that time. Take advantage. You got to take advantage of what's out there, what's given to you.
Obviously, when he says Austin 316, that's big. But right before that, he says to you, he goes real personal on you. He goes, get yourself a bottle of Thunderbird or something like that. He's going off your demons. What did you think of that? Were you okay with that?
I didn't like that, but I'm sure Vince had something to do with that. Vince is a cold-hearted bastard, man.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I remember they did the storyline with Jerry Lawler, and he threw whiskey on me and stuff and called me a drunk. Yeah, that dug in pretty hard, man.
What's your relationship been like with Vince ever since? Have you seen him in years, or?
I seen him whenever I got this ring.
For the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, but that's it.
Yeah.
I don't have a relationship with Vince McMahon.
Gotcha. Do you have negative feelings toward him?
Sure I do.
Really? Just from the treatment while you were there?
Treatment and his treatment of talent that went up there and gave their lives. And guys that didn't, so many guys have needed help since those years. for injuries, and he has nothing to give for it.
Yeah.
I've had several injuries that I had to have taken care of, but the one that really stuck a real big knife in me was Kamala. He had to have his legs amputated.
I heard about that. Yeah.
And Vince McMahon had nothing for him.
Yeah.
Nothing.
And Kamala passed away a few years ago. Yeah.
Yes, he did. And here Vince McMahon is a multi-billionaire. How did you make your money, Vince? By those wrestlers?
Yeah.
Come on. That's it.
And so after WWE, you kind of move around different places, kind of on the indie circuit to an extent. What's life like for you at this point? I mean, reading your bio, it's back and forth.
It is so good. Now that I'm clean and sober, man, my life is free. I am free.
Talk to me about your work in getting clean and sober. That took a long time after the 90s, correct?
Took 3 years.
Really?
I lived with Diamond Dallas Page for almost 3 years. 2.5 years. And
it was you and Scott Hall, I remember.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dallas was our guardian. We were in a compound there, man. And they watched us like hawks.
What do you mean your guardian, to make sure you couldn't get access to drugs, alcohol, whatever?
It made sure I was protected. I never left the house alone. I didn't drive. I cut my driver's license up because I wanted to get sober.
Yeah.
More than anything. And by God, I did it. And it was a lot of hard work. I went from being an 8-ball a day guy with cocaine and the booze go with it and the pills. And I just went cold turkey.
Are you surprised, Jake? Are you surprised you're still here?
Yes. I wouldn't be if I hadn't gotten clean.
Really?
Yeah, I'd have been dead a long time ago.
And so you go through that with Dallas. Why has Dallas done this for other wrestlers? I mean, he's really made it almost a passion and a ministry for himself there.
Well, he's doing it out of his love for the game, the love for the business, and the love for the talent. He really cares, and he lives his life on his sleeve, man, and he does what he believes. And it helped his business doing it. His business blew up over that time. So it was helping Dallas. It was helping me. He helped me because I had helped him in the beginning.
Yeah.
When everybody else said he was too old to get into wrestling, I helped him get into wrestling.
I wanted to get your opinion on something that touches on drugs and alcohol. A lot of your recovery at this point is around the times of the Chris Benoit tragedy.
Yeah.
You're in the industry. What was that like for the business?
It stunned everybody, man. Nobody's seen that coming.
Yeah.
And I still don't believe it. God knows, but I don't. I just don't see that happening. The things that happened in that house and the way they happened and the timeline that they happened, it didn't happen in 15 minutes in a moment of rage. It was strung out over 2 days. The boy died, the child died first, then the wife died, and then he killed himself over 2 days. And I just don't. I just can't see it.
What did you think about the public conversation about wrestlers with drugs and CTE? Did you think that was fair there, or did you think it was so awful that other wrestlers shouldn't be lumped into that conversation?
I don't know. This CTE thing, man, is real serious. I know I have issues.
Yeah.
I mean, I wrestled for a long time, and I went and did all the tests, and they said, "Well, how many concussions do you think you had a year?" Well, honestly, probably 5 or 6, but let's say 3. Let's just say 3 a year. Okay, but I wrestled for 28 years.
Yeah.
3 times 28 is not a good number. when you have 60 or 70 friggin' concussions. And I know that at times I have problems with my speech and my feet, and things are starting to go different ways now,
Yeah.
you know, and my thinking's not clear.
So let's talk about something a little more positive. A few years ago, you pop up on AEW. Tony Khan brings you in.
Yeah.
Tell me about that. Was that exciting for you to come back for AEW?
Man, it was a gift, man. It really was. And I'm still there. I'm still working for AEW. I work behind the scenes, and I still manage one great talent, and Lance Archer. He's been hurt, and he's been cleared now. We're fixing to get back in the ring and go for it again. But to go back out there after being gone for 20 years, man, it was amazing. What a rush.
What have you thought about AEW coming into the business and this massive other company, this alternative to WWE?
I love it. I love it. It's good for the talent.
And how are you physically today? I mean, you've talked about it all, and I've read that I think you were on oxygen at one point, and it's been rough. Yeah. How you doing in general? You look pretty good based on looking at you right here.
I'm doing good now, man. Got the oxygen thing taken care of. I do stuff now to ward off some of the problems that I have, and some that are still coming. I do need another hip replaced. Be my third one.
Mm-hmm. So we may have you, I hear, possibly next month in Jacksonville for WrestleCon.
Damn right I'm going to be there, man.
And there's been a lot. I mean, you've been in Jacksonville a lot lately because that's where AEW is. You excited to come to the show?
Sure I am. I get to see the fans, man. I love talking to the fans. You know, they take me back.
Talk to me about those fan experiences. I mean, most celebrities or athletes, you know, they kind of wither and go, but wrestlers stick around. The fans still love them after decades.
They do, man. They'll come to me and they're so happy. Sometimes they're so caught off that they can't even speak. You know, I think that's so funny. But I love to hear their stories about the first time they watched me wrestle. Who were they with? You know, usually grandfather or their dad, and it was special times. And sometimes they tear up because they're remembering somebody that's gone now. And sometimes I want to tear up because they'll remind me of a match that I've forgotten about. You know, and it's just great to take pictures with them, to sign the autographs, to sign their memorabilia. I love doing it, and just come on out, man, because I'm going to be there only Saturday, though. I'm only going to be there on Saturday.
Gotcha. Saturday, June the 10th. Well, we're going to be there too. We'll be looking for you.
Cool.
And so in general, this AEW thing, so you're behind the scenes, the young talent, what's the general atmosphere of the company?
I think it's good. There's some issues up right now, but it's a young company. There are going to be issues. Everybody's still trying to find their spot.
And I want to know,
becomes clear.
When was the last time you were physically around a snake? It's been a while.
3 years ago on AEW, they brought one in.
They did bring one in, and you had to face the old fear?
I had to face it one more time.
Who do you keep in touch with in the industry? Oh, you keep in touch with Hacksaw?
Yeah, man, we're buds.
Yeah. I saw he was holding a guy, an intruder, into his house at gunpoint a few months back.
Yeah, it was, man. That was pretty scary, man. It really shook his wife up. And,
yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah, it shook me up too.
But you and Hacksaw remain good? That's good.
Oh, yeah. Me and Hacksaw, and then me and DDP are tight all the time.
Sure. And what part of the country you live in now?
I live in Smyrna, Georgia, outside Atlanta.
And I made the mistake of saying, when you started, were you in Stone Mountain? You told me you were in Texas. Was Stone Mountain a gimmick, or did you ever live there?
Just a gimmick. I met my wife there.
Oh, so that's how you chose Stone Mountain.
Yeah.
Gotcha. And what's it like today versus, say, 1995? Living clean? I mean, talk to me about the different perspective you have on just life and your day-to-day world.
I actually do things that I enjoy. You know, when you're a drug addict, all you do is drugs. That's all. You don't have time for anything else. Your lover is your drug. Your partner is your drug. You know, you're handcuffed to it, man. You stay in the house and do it. That's it. So now I'm going out and seeing things. This last week we went out and got in a sailboat, went out and followed dolphins around for a while. That was fun.
Yeah.
And we just went to the beach and just hung out and walked in the sand and felt great.
And you're about as open of a book. I mean, we've seen in this podcast as anyone I think I've ever met. Why are you so open with your life?
I don't want to live a lie. So I just live the truth, man. Plus, I've got a book coming out in the next couple of months.
What do you know what it's going to be called? What people can look for it as?
The Book of Jake.
The Book of Jake. So we'll keep an eye on that.
Yeah, do that, man.
Jake the Snake Roberts, it has been an absolute pleasure. We will definitely look for you next month in Jacksonville.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Take care.
Thanks again, Jake.
So just a gripping interview with Jake there. Once again, he'll be at Jacksonville River City WrestleCon at the Fairgrounds June 10th and 11th. He says he'll be there on the 10th. A lot of other wrestlers will be there both days. But yeah, just a hard life, talking about his father and the difficulties there and what he said about his dad's past and having to hear about it from all the other wrestlers in the locker rooms over the years was difficult. The drugs and the alcohol, saying he's finally got himself to a point where he's clean now. You've seen him. He's with Lance Archer. He's kind of his manager in AEW. So he's been doing a lot in this company and really is gotten his life to an extent really back on track as a performer, still with this industry for 50 years. And I asked him, Jake, do you still think you should be here? And he said if it wasn't for Dallas Page, he may not be. If you don't know the story of Diamond Dallas Page, look it up. He does DDP yoga, and he's helped so many wrestlers. He helped Scott Hall before Scott Hall passed for a number of years. We talked to Mark Marrow on a previous episode here on Going Ringside. I think that may have been episode 9, where we spoke to Mark Marrow about that. So it is just interesting to see what Dallas Page has done for all these wrestlers to get their lives back on track. Just some really good work out of his facility up there in Georgia. So this was our interview with Jake. I hope you enjoyed it. We're going to be back here. This was episode 13. Episode 14 will debut next Wednesday. So thanks so much for joining us for another episode of Going Ringside.
This has been Going Ringside with The Local Station, brought to you every Wednesday on your favorite podcast player, on New Sport Jax Plus, as well as the New Sport Jax YouTube channel.